Your neighbor tells you about the unstable man in the cul-de-sac who claims to have been abducted by aliens. And then there's the woman in town who claims to see Bigfoot all the time. Your boss, who you greatly admire, confides in you that he has started speaking with his wife daily when he gets home from work. She died 8 years ago. It's hard to believe this stuff, and you write these stories off as overactive imaginations. Are these people seeking attention, or are they a bit unstable? No matter what you think, if you're like me, you walk away wondering, what if that was true? The What If It's True podcast features stories by ordinary people like you and me. Something has happened to them, something so strange they are in agony unless they tell others. My name is Cameron Buckner, and the What If It's True podcast is available at whatifitstruepodcast.com and on all available podcast apps.
Welcome to Beast TV. What was that? You better get a fresh dip and buckle up. Welcome to Beast TV. And I tell you what, we got a little eye candy tonight. We don't have to look at Larry.
Larry
Larry is, I believe he's hunting. I think he had a dentist appointment today, and then he's hunting. And so he's not able to be on with us. But we appreciate everybody that's tuning in tonight. We consider everybody our family here, and we appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to watch this podcast and support us. Whether you're watching it live or if you're watching it later on. But how you doing, Miss Sherry?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. You're getting ready. You're getting ready for company tomorrow, aren't you?
Yes. Everybody tune in tomorrow night. Mark and Rebecca are supposed to be up here, and they're going to try to do a live chat from here tomorrow night, a live show.
Good deal. Good deal. Yeah, I try to tune in every Friday night and watch them. They have so much knowledge as far as plants and trees go. They told me a little trick that I can use on my pecan trees. I've got 50 pecan trees, and they really haven't been bearing worth anything the past few years, but they have told me some things that I can do, and we're going to see if it works.
Yeah, if it hits the fan, I'm going to Alabama. They know a lot more than I do.
Yeah. Well, you want to introduce our guest this evening?
Me? You introduce him.
Okay. Well, tonight we've got somebody that I hold close and dear to me. We don't talk all the time, but there's certain people, and that's why I called it Bigfoot Integrity, is because he is such a righteous person, and he shoots from the hip. He will tell you what it could be, or it may not be, but he's always honest with his own research. And so we would like to welcome Stephen Hill to Beast TV.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're more than welcome. We appreciate you coming on. Okay, just to well, let's get a little background first. Give us the general area where you live at.
I'm in Southwest Arkansas, and I think most people probably know William Lunsford is my primary research partner, and I live about it's about a 40-minute drive from my house to William's house. And William, he lives closer to the Falk area, and I'm actually a little bit closer to the Oklahoma line than he is. So it's we're not too far apart that we can't get together. But here in Southwest Arkansas, I'm probably about 50 miles from Falk, which is where which is a pretty well-known place. You know, as far as arguably the second most famous Bigfoot story in the world, you know, comes from here. So.
Yeah, everybody still talks about that movie.
Oh yeah.
And what comes out the most on it is the guy on the turlet and the hand coming through. I think that has been etched in everybody's mind when they have to go to the bathroom out in the field. Is that arm going to come around?
Yeah. I'll never forget Kumbo's story. He was telling about that one night. He got to feeling something breathing down his neck. I thought, man, better him than me.
Well, just to get a little background, your daughter had a sighting in 2008. And if I'm mistaken, this is kind of what started you on this Bigfoot journey.
Yes, it was. In 2008, it was my oldest daughter who had the sighting then. And she now lives in the house. She now lives in that spot. And this is before she was old enough to drive, and she was looking out through the blinds in her bedroom window, which faced the highway. And she saw something tall come walking along the edge of the neighbor's yard. You know, it's just basically a silhouette is what she was seeing. And it walked up and stood behind their mailbox, and the mailbox only came up to about its waist. And she said it stopped, said it kind of looked a little bit, and then it turned around and went back the exact same way that it came from. And she came and she got me and said, Dad, come look at this. And of course, by the time I got there, you know, there wasn't anything over there in the neighbor's yard anymore. So that was kind of a head scratcher for me, you know, because I'd heard the stories and I was real familiar with the Falk monster, all those stories that came from there. And of course, I'd never seen anything anytime I'd ever been in Falk, but I was always curious with it. And that kind of got the ball rolling. And then I think it was January of 2009, you know, that's when I had a sighting just a few miles from an area called Casatop Falls, close to Wicks, Arkansas. And that really got me there. So I went for a couple of years going back and forth. Well, did I really see what I thought I saw, or was it something else? So,
I've seen that. I've seen that more in witnesses than I haven't seen that with witnesses, with them doubting themselves. That was actually going to be my next question. Tell us in as much detail as you know about your sighting in 2009.
Okay. The road that I was coming on, I'll think of the name of it here in probably about 30 minutes. So, the Ed Banks Road, that was the name of the road I was on. And there's a real steep hill when I was coming home from work. I'm coming down a real steep hill, and it had a real hard right-hand turn coming back. And I had just made the turn, and I kind of got straightened out again with the road. And that's when at that time, it was still a big timber, and I could see something moving through the tree line. And I thought, what is that? And as I got closer to it, this thing, it just kept moving. And it finally crossed the road in front of me. I'm going to say, I'm still thinking around 80 yards. And when this thing crossed the road, the thing that stuck out in my mind the most was how fast it was and how smooth it was, because there wasn't any up and down to it. This thing didn't move like a deer or a bear or anything like that. And that's the part that really got me. And it was on all fours. And there wasn't a muzzle or a snout on it. And it never looked at me whenever it crossed the road. And when it thing crossed the road, I saw where it had gone up the hill on the other side of the road. And I thought, well, here in just a few seconds, I'll look up there and I'll get a better look. I'll get another look at what I saw. And whenever I got up there to where it crossed the road and I looked up that hill, I didn't see anything. Whatever it was completely gone. And the woods were open enough that I should have seen it, or I thought in my mind that I should have. So that was the thing that got me, because my first thought was a bear. And I thought, well, if that's a bear, that's got to be the one of the few that could probably make the Olympic team, because it was so fast. So, and that was that started me on a journey, you know, whether or not did I really see a Bigfoot, or did I just see a bear that didn't have a snout? And I went back and forth, you know, for the first 2 years, I was just a skeptic. There were times I would think, yeah, that had to be what I thought it was. And then I'd say, no, there's no way. So but my skepticism actually went on beyond 2 years. It went on for a long time after that, believe it or not.
One thing that I really appreciate about you is that, and William, that y'all aren't after the money shot.
Yeah.
And it's more important to y'all to enjoy y'all's time together and the friendship that you have and the bonds that you spend in the memory, you know, with your memories.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people may catch something legitimate, capture it, be able to talk about it, and they get a little notoriety on it, and then they feel that they have to live up to that's their benchmark. And I know that y'all have spent hundreds of hours in the woods and not have anything happen. And y'all were forthcoming about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I actually work in the woods every day. You know, it's being involved in forestry. I'm out there five days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, sometimes from daylight till dark. And man, I couldn't tell you. I mean, this year was one of those years when I just, you know, I've had several sightings, and this is one of those years where it just hadn't happened for me. You know, I really don't have any new good audio. I did have I believe it was a missed opportunity a few months ago here at the house. I'd gone outside for something, and I looked toward the hill where I've had several things happen through the years. And I saw a shadow out there, and I thought, boy, that shadow sure does look like a head. And I thought, it's just a shadow. So I went back in the house, and for some reason, about 45 minutes later, I went back outside, and I went to looking for that shadow that I saw, and that shadow wasn't there anymore. So I don't know. I didn't even take a picture of it, because I'd taken pictures of some stuff earlier this year, and every time I did, it's just a shadow. So it was always disappointing. So on that day, I didn't, and I think I quite possibly had a missed opportunity. So,
Do you still keep trail cams out, Stephen?
yeah, we still have them out right now.
Are you getting anything on those now, or?
It usually drops off this time of year. There's a lot of deer hunting. Actually, the area where we put our trail cameras out is actually public land. So a lot of deer hunters in that area right now. But just because it's public land doesn't mean it's not still good and a viable area. It's always late December is when that particular big area we call Ground Zero. That's when it's always the best. That's when we found, of course, William, he talked about it when he was on here a while back, that 3 3/4 inch baby track that we've got a picture of. Somewhere on my phone somewhere, I've got a picture of that with a dollar bill laying beside it. I mean, it's little. We've at the place, we called the candy store. I remember there one year, it was in February one year. I think it was the early part of February. I found one deer horn at the candy store. And I thought, okay, it may be time to start gearing up again. And I think it was about 5 or 6 weeks later, we found the other one. And on that other horn, I've still got the horns here at the house. I don't have them handy, but I've got them. And on that one side, it looks like it didn't. When a deer will shed, they come off even. The horn does. Well, that one side, I can't remember if it's the right side or the left side. It didn't come off even. It's kind of looked like it was torn off its head, actually, because I'd also found
wow.
I'd also found the hams and probably 20 inches or more of the backbone with no hide. In the back legs, they hadn't been cut or anything. They'd been snapped off. So, but that was pretty interesting there. And that where I found that other horn had been look at what we think was probably torn off its head. There's a deer stand there, and I know that nobody's hunted that deer stand. I know nobody's hunted it for 6 years. So why somebody abandoned their stand and they've never gone back after it? I'll let everybody else guess on why. But that's a really good spot.
We found the same thing that up there where we had that picture that we had on here, Mark. Remember the stand was still there?
Yeah.
And the season had been closed for a long time.
Yeah. This stand has been on the same tree. The tree's now dead. The top part of the tree is snapped off. I mean, it was probably where it's broke off. I don't know if it's I don't know. It's probably 10 inches where it's broke off up there. I don't know. I mean, it could have been the wind or it could have been something else, but nobody's ever come after that stand, and nobody's hunted it. That's where that eye shine video came from. That's right there on that spot, So
sounds like they got ran off, doesn't it?
That's what I'm thinking, because I've heard people tell that before. It's we've got some stories down here from some kids that were coon hunting last year. I think it was last year, it might have been the year before, and they got chased out of the woods coon hunting. There's some other folks down there in East Texas. They got chased out of their stand and they never went back after their feeder, their deer stand, their camera, or anything. They left it. As far as I know, it's still down there unless somebody else got it. It happens more often than what people think. I know in the deer lease. I'm sorry, Mark.
Well, no, I don't want to interrupt you, but I was going to say, we hear the same thing about abandoned campsites, in primitive areas and tents torn up, and where it looks like people just picked up and left immediately when something started happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I know on one of the deer leases that I'm on, I know of 2 sightings for sure. One was on the deer lease itself, where a guy was going to a stand one morning. There was enough light he could silhouette his stand, And he saw somebody standing there at the stand, and he hollered at him and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And this person took off running toward the river in the dark with no flashlight, and they never checked up. And the other one is a property that joins it, where a man was walking to his property one day. And to give you an idea, there's a ford on the river, and the ford was where you could ford the river at. It was too deep for him to cross in his pickup truck. So he was just walking up the river, and he saw somebody in the river, and he thought, well, they're out there fishing. And as he got closer to him, he said, "Man, that is one big fella out there fishing," because the water was only about mid-thigh deep on him. And as he got closer to him, and that person that he thought was fishing took off up the riverbank, he said what he did is that he bounded 3 times and got out of the river and went straight up a bank. And you know how some of these riverbanks are in the South. They're just straight up and down. Yeah. And that thing went straight up that riverbank, and they didn't see him anymore. So he said he got a good enough look to tell me that it did have a beard. So, but it wasn't a person.
Tell me about when you and your research partners go out. Just kind of summarize kind of how y'all do. Do y'all set out recorders or plot watchers, or do y'all go and sit somewhere? Just kind of give our audience an idea of y'all's protocols when y'all go out.
Well, with us, it varies. There are times when William and I, I'll never forget the first time that we went to an area that we call the Dark Woods. We were like schoolboys getting to go to town for the first time when we went there, and we didn't have a flashlight. We didn't have an audio recorder. We didn't have a gun. We didn't have anything. We had each other, and that was it. And we were down there in the area, and I guarantee you, man, you don't have to worry about light pollution in this place. It gets dark when there's no moon. I promise it gets dark. And there are times we do that. You know, we're just about as unprepared as anybody could be, and that's usually when something's going to happen. If something did happen on that night, I'll never forget the vocal that we heard that night. We'd been around. We'd heard more tree knocks in that place than any place else we'd ever been. And we were getting ready to go. And we gone during the week. I think it was on a Thursday night. And we on the way out, and we crossed the bridge, and I stopped and backed up, and I said, "William, see if you can get something going here." So we backed up, and I stopped on the bridge. And whenever I killed the truck, of course, it was just as dark as you can imagine. And William did a call, and he immediately got a response. And it was what we both thought was a coyote. And this call kept going, and it kept going. And when the call finally got to an end, it ended with whoop, whoop, whoop. I was mad enough to kick rocks because we didn't have an audio recorder that night. But, you know, we're not always unprepared, and there are times that we do have we will go ahead and we'll have our thermal with us. We'll have night vision, audio going, stuff like that. And I've regretted it before that I didn't get the audio going sooner. I'll never forget the first time that we Daniel Becker, who's a guy who lives in Alaska, but he will come down here and he will go out with us sometimes. And I think it's the first time that Daniel came out with us. And William had done a call, and before I could get the audio recorder on, we'd already got a response. So that was one of those times where I guess it was Murphy's Law of Bigfoot. And we're going to get something good, but we're not going to have evidence of it. So.
I got a question. Stephen, the one you said you'd had, multiple sightings. I don't know if you saw the whole thing enough to, see much detail, but did they all favor? Did they their facial, every look different, facial
Yeah.
features and stuff?
We've got a few that look similar. And basically what that's going to be, it's going to be, to me, they look more like a gorilla in the face. They're not from the Eddie Munster widow's peak right here on the forehead down to probably the chin. There's no hair, and the nostrils are big, and the nose is really not that pronounced on them. Then you've got some others, and those typically have a conical shaped head. But we've also got some that have more of a round head and a big nose, and they may have hair all over their face, with the exception of the nose. I mean, I've got a picture of one. It's not necessarily that great. I know what I'm looking at because I've looked at it for years, and I've studied it. But it's got a big old wide nose, and it's the skin is more like ours, more of a light complexion. Whereas some of those other ones, they're going to actually have a gray looking face. So, but that's and the hair color. It can go anywhere from the color of an Irish setter, being a wavy hair like that all over, to brown, to black, even blonde. They definitely don't all look the same.
Does their behavior, does it follow any kind of a pattern to the way they look, do you think? Like, do some of them act one way, some of them act another way, if they, depending on how they look, do you think? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the things that I'm inclined to agree with is that you have different types, and you've got some of them out there. They look enough like a Bigfoot that they can be mistaken for a Bigfoot, and they're more aggressive. It's kind of like a Gugway. Would be an example of that. Which I know William, he had an encounter with one of those in the Falk area. Most of them that I've actually seen around here, even though they don't necessarily look the same. Most of them that I've seen in this particular area, they're I don't know, I guess I've lived here long enough that they're used to me, but they've never really been that aggressive. There've been some times that they've messed with me. It's in some pretty good ways. It's I know Mark and I, before the show, we were talking about with deer and doing the process and then keeping one in the ice chest for a long time. And I did that. That's a couple of years ago. My son-in-law killed a deer for me, and it was I put it in the ice chest on the weekend. And all through the week, I was kind of tired, and I just didn't feel like messing with it. So I kept putting new ice on, draining the water off. And finally, on a Friday evening, I thought, I'm going to go ahead and process my deer. And so I wheel it in the house, and I get my cutting board out. I got my grinder out. I got my gloves on, my knife ready. And I reach in the ice chest to start getting the deer out. And there wasn't nothing but ice in my ice chest. So
whoa.
I've thought about that a lot. If that was one of my neighbors come by and stole my deer, why didn't they just take the whole ice chest? And that's the thing. So, my wife told me on that Thursday night, or I guess into Friday morning, she said, about 3:00, the dogs went off. And of course, I slept through them. And she didn't think anything about it. Why the dogs in the house might have started barking like they did, but they did. And then when I go on Friday evening, there wasn't a deer in my ice chest. So, and you know how the ice, as you open and close the ice chest, sometimes it'll form a sheet of ice on top. That wasn't even broken. That wasn't broken in the ice chest.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know on that one. It's some of the weird things that happen. It's I don't have answers for all of it for sure. But that's some crazy stuff like that. It's I've had them mimic my daughter's whistle, which was a few years ago. Yeah, I know I've heard y'all talk about mimicking before, and we had a brindle colored boxer, and she was a rescue. I didn't think she would survive whenever my wife rescued her. And there were times that we would put her on a chain right there by the carport. And that was one of those times, because there were certain times whenever she would get real aggressive to our Yorkie. So we would just kind of put her outside to let her burn off her energy out there. And I'd gone out there one night to let her in. And as I was unhooking her from the chain, I heard this whistle up on the hill. And I thought, man, and my daughter, she was in the kitchen. She was doing homework. And I came in and I was trying to describe this whistle that I heard to her, whenever I was getting scratch off the chain to bring her inside the house. And my daughter whistled, and I thought, wait a minute. That's the exact same whistle I heard about a minute and a half ago outside on the hill. Was your whistle. Because that was the whistle she always did for the dogs whenever she tried to get them to come in. So, yeah,
that's creepy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I promise you it is. And I mean, at Ground Zero, another one where they've done some mimicking is I was up there one night. I was putting out the treats, at the candy store and the other cameras. And I remember I had to cough. So when I could feel this cough coming on, I said, I'm just going to go ahead and exaggerate this and make it like a deer blowing. And that's what I did. And when I did that, I immediately got a response just a little bit to the west of me. And I looked up and I thought, how about that? Well, in less than 30 seconds, straight ahead of me, straight south of me, down there on the tree line, I heard William's owl call. I don't know if you ever heard William do his barred owl call, but he does a really good one. And I heard William's barred owl call. It was so good. After all this, I heard William's barred owl call, and then I heard what sounded like hoot owls laughing. I'm sure y'all have all heard that whenever they'll get to going. And I heard that, and what stopped all of it was the second loudest tree knock I've ever heard in my life. And I mean, it stopped. No more noise, no more nothing. And then Williams call so good that I called him because he wasn't with me that night. I said, William, are you up here messing with me? And I could hear him whistling for one of his dogs, and I knew he wasn't there. But now, with those mimics, yeah, I've heard those mimics before. And I mean, where they've got to spend at least a little bit of time around somebody, to be able to pick that up. Or in my mind, I would think they do.
What's really scary about that to me is like kids.
Mm-hmm.
What if they mimic the parent or something, or the dog or something, and the kids went to them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it happens.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it does. It's and I think a lot of times I think part of the activity that I had around here was, we've got a pool, and whenever the kids were a little bit younger, our kids are spaced out. There's about 9 years difference between all three of them, believe it or not. So it's and I guess to go ahead and tell their ages, they're 29, 20, and 11. So that's and when the two youngest ones, they would play in the pool. That's a lot of times that's when we would have a lot of activity during those years when they were outside doing that. They would make a lot of noise and slap in the pool, laughing, carrying on, and yeah. So that's when we had observers, for sure.
Oh. Y'all had a lady that told about when she was in the pool, things happening too, didn't you, Mark?
Yes. That was PJ, Arkansas. And it seemed like every time that she would go out there to the pool and Paul wasn't at home, activity would start ramping up. And I know Carrie Arnold found the corridor that led from the top of the ridge all the way down to the tree to where she was spotting this creature looking at her. And you're kind of vulnerable if you're in a pool. Yeah. It got to a point where if they were outside, I would usually
have to go outside and make my presence known in some way, you know. If I didn't do anything else but stand at the end of the pool, you know, just to let them know, hey, the alpha is still here. So, for what good that would do if they really wanted to get aggressive, but I would go do that, you know.
Wow. So, tell us another encounter that you have had.
Oh man, yeah, I've actually had them here alone. It's with the dogs, with the Scratch, the boxer that I mentioned before. Somehow she got educated on them, and I'm not sure how she got educated and she survived, but she did. And it got to the point with her that I would, if she got real quiet and she got to the door and she just wanted to go in, I knew that I needed to start looking around. And I actually, one of the pictures I sent you, Mark, I sent you 2 pictures of the same photo. And one of them, you can see the post on the carport. And the other one, I zoomed it in a little bit more, hoping maybe people can see what I saw in that. But that was one of those times whenever I was here alone. My wife and daughter, the kids were gone. My daughter was went to a softball tournament. And I could tell by the way that Scratch was acting that I need to be paying attention. And I actually caught a couple of them. They were about 65 steps from the house. And I'd panned around just taking pictures of the place, what I could take pictures of there from the carport. And I finally spotted those. And I thought, oh yeah, there you are. And I'll never forget that, because after I'd spotted them, I mean, they typically don't move a lot whenever you spot them. I mean, they can stare at you for a long time. And I remember after I took the picture, I come back inside the house and I brought the dogs in with me. And I remember thinking, whenever I got in the house, what in the world am I going to do if they decide they want to come in the house with me? Because I didn't know whether they had good intentions or not. And that was one of those that kind of troubled me a little bit, because they were that close and I was home alone. You know.
Yeah, that's scary. That's why if somebody asked me to come to a place where they live and to do some research and to try to get my opinion on things, that I'm not going to make calls or knocks or anything like that. I don't want to do nothing that's, because I believe these creatures are self-aware of their surroundings. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to do anything that would jeopardize that family.
Right. Yeah. And I've never done a call here. I've thought about it before, but I've never done one because I honestly, I don't know what I'm saying whenever I do a call. Sometimes I get a response, sometimes I don't. But I've never done one here at home. I just don't. With those calls, see, I'd started doing calls years ago. You know, I used to watch the Finding Bigfoot stuff, and they would do their calls and all that. And I thought, well, I'll do that, because I get to go to some pretty remote places, believe it or not, here in Arkansas. And I'll never forget it. I quit doing calls in August of 2015 for 2 years, because I was up there. I was 6 miles from the closest town, and I was close to the Oklahoma line. And I did a call, and I got an answer, and it wasn't that far away. And it kind of, to say it made me uneasy was an understatement. It was, and I quit doing calls for 2 years. I was done with it. I thought, man, you're out here by yourself. You don't know what you're saying. What if you're giving an invitation of some kind?
I tell you, one of the creepiest places that I have ever been at night was in a boat on the Sulphur River.
Oh my, yeah.
And so tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about that area, because that is just, it's like you've gone back in time a
Oh yeah.
1,000 years. And it's just, I mean, you can almost feel the vibes.
Oh yeah, you absolutely can. And we've had several experiences. I've had a few sightings. In fact, the only time I've ever seen one through a thermal was down there on the levee down there by the Sulphur River, down there in the Sulphur River bottoms. We were my youngest daughter. She was still going with us at that time. She was only 15, and this would have been December 23rd, 2018. It was on a Sunday night, and we'd gone down there to the end of a road called 414, and we'd actually found a footprint in the middle of the gravel road. And William had the truck parked on top of what would have been the next one. So it was about, it was about I think it was around a 14-inch track is what we found down there. And I could see all I could see was the head, through the thermal, and it stayed there for a while. And I handed William the thermal, and he looked at it. And whenever we raised the thermal up again, it had moved farther away from us. And at the very end, when we decided to leave there, that was I actually saw the thing moving, and the thermals, they will do a reset every so many seconds or whatever, and that's what happened. It disappeared during that reset. But and after that, I mean, we decided we could go to Thornton's Wells, and down there on Mercer is where that was at. And William had walked down there to the boat ramp on Mercer. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, Mark. I think you've been in the area.
Yeah.
But William was on the boat ramp, and my daughter, she was up above the boat ramp, and I was up there by her. And she was looking through the FLIR. And she was a 15-year-old, and she'd been going Bigfooting with me since, I think, probably about the third week of October. And what she saw was one across the bow, standing there beside a tree. And it was a big one. She the next day, of course, she handed me the FLIR and said, "Look and see if you see what I see." And of course, by the time I got the FLIR up and I looked, it was already gone. And so the following day, I asked her to go to her room and I asked her to draw it, and she did. And for size comparison, you've met William, and William's a pretty good sized fella. She drew him as a stick figure for size comparison. So, but I mean, down there in those bottoms, man. I mean, at night, it can get really eerie. And we've been down there at times when it did get that way. We've got one spot that's kind of a hot spot that we like real well, and we've I've seen the chill bumps on William and my daughter Sydney's arms down there before. It's thick when it comes in like that. And we actually have that on the audio where you can hear one running in, and all of a sudden we'd been there for 29 minutes according to the audio stamp, when you could hear this and just silence. We're not sure if it went up in a tree or what. That's the same place where Dustin Clark had his sighting, was down there in that spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of hog carcasses down there in Mercer, and I feel like that's a big food source for them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we have we found a skull, and it was stuck in between two trees, and that's all it was just a skull. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I wish more people would talk about that, with the skull or the head. You remember a few years ago, I think y'all were doing the show on Monday nights, Larry's show, and I sent you a picture of a twisted coyote that I found.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite as twisted as what one that y'all had found, but I checked on that thing about 5 weeks later, And Mark, the only thing, when I walked out there to it, the only thing that was missing was the head. The rest of the carcass was still intact. All the fur was still there, the whole thing, but the head was gone. And that was just kind of odd to me. You know, I don't know if you've run across other people who've noticed that or not.
Well, I have once at LBL, and what amazed me about it is, why didn't other carnivals eat that? And the only conclusion that I can come to is they could smell where the booger touched it and killed it.
Yeah.
And they did not want to be, they knew it was off limits, because it doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Yeah, I didn't understand that either, you know. And when I found that thing, it was still fresh. Rigor mortis hadn't set in on it yet when I found it. I mean, then I go back and check on it later on, you know, and the head's gone, and that's it.
So, you think maybe it's the brain they want? It's tender meat. Maybe they're after the brain.
Yeah. I've wondered about that. You know, maybe were they after the brain, or were they collecting the skull as some kind of they're going to use as a marker or a trophy or what? You know, it's a real curiosity to me as to exactly why that would be the case. But I mean, we found it with hogs and coyotes, so it's not just a one-time thing.
Yeah. Well, we got some pictures and audio and some footage, and I think I want to start with this eye shine from a few years ago, and I'll just play it, and you can just give us the background on it.
On this right here, this was on December 21st, 2018. And when we first saw eye shine out there, we saw 3 sets of eyes. We had another one about the same height as what you're focused on right there. And the other set of eyes was quite a bit lower. And I probably should have thought of that and sent you the still out of that video where you can see a cone-shaped head down there in the left-hand corner that I somehow managed to stop the video on that and get a picture of that. But it's what it looks like to us, but we believe the little one was, you know, a juvenile.
How long did y'all actually watch this?
Ooh, man. I think altogether I recorded about 5 or 6 minutes, something like that. And we watched it for probably 15. And what this was, I went back on I think I went back on a Sunday after church, and I stepped that off. It was around 200 yards is what the distance was where those eyes were. And I did find an impression in the grass where they had stood for a little bit and took a step. But the other thing I found that day was a 3-toed track. And that 3-toed track, the big toe was about 2 1/4 inches wide. And the width of those 3 toes was around 7 1/2 inches wide. And that's where we also thought we saw impressions of a baby track out there as well, beside that 3-toed track.
That's just some amazing footage. What was going through y'all's mind?
At the time, I was just excited because with this right here, we had actually gone to a different spot, probably about a mile away from here. And William had done some calls, and my daughter and her friend were with us. And when William did the calls, he got a response. So my wife called because my father-in-law was in the hospital, and my wife, she wound up needing to go to the hospital that night. So I took Sydney and her friend back home so they could watch our son. And when William and I went back, I knew where the vocalization came from, and this was the spot that we went to. And so with that, I think I was more amazed than anything, because as you watch the video, I mean, to me, I believe the eyes actually change colors during that.
They change colors, and you see them blink too every now and then.
Yeah, you can see blinking too, so it's and what that was a clean cut, and that was just a little bit of brush that had been wasn't merchantable, is what that is around it. Those aren't big trees, so that's why the eyes are up there at the top of that brush. We're guessing over 7 feet up, because it wasn't up in a tree. I've shared that to some other researchers, and their first thought was an owl. Then I told them how far away it was and that it was in a clean cut, and they're like, oh, well, it probably wasn't an owl then. So
yeah, that's just amazing footage. And we also have some pictures that you sent me, and we'll just go through them, and I'll let you give the background on them,
okay.
the backstory, and we won't rush you.
Okay. This the one on the left is going to be out of a video that I took last year. I've got it up on my YouTube channel, which is just my name. so it's going to be really difficult to find. But the one on the left, it's so stinking dark, but the light color that you can see, I believe, are its teeth. If somebody can zoom in on that right there, you can see that they're not good, even teeth. And the one on the right, that's a fresh tree snap. And the story behind that is that was in 2017. My son and I, we had a hog trap on the place at that time. And we were on the 4-wheeler, and we went and we checked the hog trap, didn't have any hogs. And I thought, well, I'll make the ride a little bit longer, and we'll go across the creek. So we went across the creek, and this right here would have been just a couple 100 yards in from where we crossed the creek, and that tree was freshly broken off, blocking the 4-wheeler trail. And I didn't notice what was in the background when I took the picture. I was just amazed that I found this fresh tree break, because we hadn't had any weather at that time this would have been in April of that year. We hadn't had any weather that would justify that tree being broken off. I think it was around 4.5, 5 feet high is where it was broke off at. And if you look beside that other tree, you'll see a dark spot there. And that's actually the face of one of those that I say looks more like a gorilla than a patty tap, I think. But my son was with me that day, and I got off the 4-wheeler and I left him on the 4-wheeler, and I was walking around it, taking a few pictures. And with that, I carried a 9mm, and I left it in the gun case on the front rack underneath the top strap. And my son was on the 4-wheeler, and I'm walking around taking pictures, and he started telling me, "Come on, Dad, let's go." And the first few times that he told me that, I basically ignored him. And finally, when I heard the desperation in his voice of saying, "Dad, come on, let's go," he had already gone far enough over the handlebars that he grabbed my gun case and he was holding it up to his chest, saying, "Come on, Dad, let's go." And I thought, man, he's never behaved this way before. So, okay, son, we'll go ahead and we'll go. And he never did that again afterwards, anytime like that. And the picture on the left here, where you can see the post on my carport, if you look out there among the vines to the left of that pine tree, you can see a face in there. And it's going to be more of one that has a gray looking face to me. And maybe the next picture will show it a little bit better. I'm hoping it will anyway. So, but that was the one there about 65 steps from the house that night that evening whenever I was home alone, me and the dogs. But these are the ones. Yeah. Okay. On the right, you can see the trackway, and on the left, I zoomed in on the tracks where you can see that it's a canine. And the thing that's always got me with this is the fact that those are pretty much tightrope fashion, and it seems like there should be another step in there with it, if that was just a big coyote or a red wolf or something like that. But that's from the ground zero area.
Wow.
And that was actually the second trackway of that I found. The first time I found that trackway, for whatever reason, I didn't video it. I didn't take pictures of it or anything else. And those tracks, they're about 4.5 to 5 inches wide. I didn't have anything for scale, or I didn't think to put a dollar bill down beside them. I wish I would have. That would have been better. But at the time, I really didn't want to say too much about Dog Man, because on the left, that's the picture of the Dog Man. William and I were together that day, and we would usually make a clockwise rotation, checking the cameras and setting out our goodies. And on that particular day, we went counterclockwise, and we had just come up out of a draw there at ground zero. And when we got up on the hill, that wasn't the first thing that I saw. The first thing I saw was a big black head drop down below that I'll call it broom sage grass, that just grows up. And that stuff will be waist high. So, and that's what that was out there. That was out there in the field that day with me and William. And we actually had a gun with us that day, but we set the gun down so we could take pictures.
What's your thoughts, Miss Sherry, of that picture on the left?
I think looks like a Dog Man to me.
Yeah, that was my first impression too.
Yeah, you can see the ears up there. I mean, the details, of course, it could be better, but you can see the outline of the ears and the hunch position too.
Yeah.
And the arm, I mean, it's just completely different than like a Bigfoot silhouette. I mean, I think so. The head looks pretty huge too.
Yeah. To me, that was the thing. The head looked almost too big for the body.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that got me, though. William and I, we were together that day when we saw that one. So,
man, that will make you think when you're out in the middle of the night and that things like that are creeping around.
Yeah. I'm a lot more nervous out coon hunting than I am bear hunting.
Yeah.
Because you can't see what's around you.
And what? Okay, this picture on the right, that's blown up a little bit more.
Yeah. If you see that short vine right there, kind of in the middle, those vines right there beside it, that's where that face is actually at. It's kind of a gray looking face right there. And it's probably not very clear on this. I think it's a little bit better on my phone. If I could show it to you in person, I think it'd be better.
Well, you can certainly make out the characteristics of the face in this picture.
Yeah. But that right there, that's the one that's about 65 steps from the house. And yeah, that's when I was home alone, and I was standing in the carport with the dogs, hunkered down, being real quiet.
Wow.
How do you let your kids out of your sight?
I try not. It's if the kids are outside, I can't stay in the house. I've got to go outside. I've got to.
I wouldn't care if they were 40. I'd still be looking after them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how that is. It's I mean, when it's dark, it's a lot of times I tell them, hey, you don't be going outside. You go ahead and stay in the house, because I've heard some stories, of kids that are unattended, and how sometimes it's not always a good result.
Yeah.
On this picture right here, Mark, I told you in August of 2015 I quit doing calls.
Right.
Well, this was in October of 2017. I finally got my nerve up and I did a call that morning. And this was, I forget what this was. I think this was like 1:30 in the afternoon. And I got to noticing this big dark spot over there up in a tree. And I thought, I've got to take a picture of that. And I did. And Don McDonald from Mississippi, he's the guy that actually put this in 2 different filters for me to kind of bring it out a little bit. So, but that was I guess that might have been the result of waiting 2 years to do another call. I'm not sure. But that one was up in a tree. Yeah. That one on the left. You can see it there by the dollar bill. To me, I think that's knuckle impressions. I'm not going to swear to it, but I think it is. But the part that I always liked even better was down below that dollar bill. It looks like a hand has been just kind of spread out right below that dollar bill. To me, that's what it looks like. I've showed it to a few people, and I've never showed it on the show before, I don't think. But that was an interesting one there. And the picture on the right, that's a game camera picture from Ground Zero. And if you'll tell me what that is, Mark, I'll believe you.
I don't know, but it's spooky to capture something like that in the middle of the woods.
Yeah. And I mean, this was we'd seen some orbs out there. I guess we call them orbs for lack of a better word or term or whatever. And those orbs, to me, they were probably the size of a baseball or a softball, and it was just a white-looking light. And to me, I never did notice it lighting up anything else around it. And whenever it would go out, I thought it had kind of a blue tint to it, is what I'd always told William that I thought it had. And then we got this on the game camera. So I'm not sure if that's the orbs or exactly what it is. But I mean, there wasn't a brush pile for something to be standing up on back there behind it. So, and there wasn't any trees for it to be in. So I just don't know exactly what it is. I mean, this is one of those things. And when you're trying to be a Bigfoot researcher and then you run across some stuff like this, and I don't have answers for you. So. But
those were some great pictures.
Thank you.
And, Sherry, do you have any comments or questions?
I'd just like to go down there.
Come on down with Mark and Larry sometime.
Okay.
Maybe these days we'll twist their arm and get them here.
We'll work that out.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, Sherry is one of the bravest people that's out there. That's somebody, her and her niece, Misty, that if things start ramping up, you don't have to worry about them panicking. They're just going to start circling the wagons, and you don't have to worry about them breaking and running. And it's just been a real pleasure and an honor to be in the field with them.
Yeah, that's really, really important to have somebody in the woods that you can trust. I guarantee you it is, because it's I don't know. I guess I'm not going to call any names or anything like that. But I've been out there before whenever the vocals go to happening, and I've heard the truck doors lock.
And you don't have no keys in your pocket.
Yeah, and I'm standing outside.
To tell a funny story about that, we were up at LBL on the Kentucky side, where supposedly the family massacre happened, and it was me and Larry and Shelly and Dan and Vicky, and we parked right across from where it happened at, and there's a little holler. Me and Larry thought that we would walk down the holler and go down there. And we didn't have no flashlights. We had been out all day. Only flashlights we had were on our phone. And so we walked down, and we're about halfway down. And I said something to Larry. I said, you think they're going to get spooked and get back in the Jeep? And he said, nope. I locked it and got the keys in my pocket.
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind next time you take the other folks out with you.
Yeah. We have an audio clip. Now, at the beginning of this clip,
yeah,
I haven't asked you it, and at the end, is that a knock?
Yes,
that y'all heard? That's what it sounded like, but I haven't.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, the audio's not better. I'm not proficient in downloading from the audio to a computer to get a good clear. So I played the audio and recorded it on my phone. Is why part of it sounds like it does there with that. So it's, but yeah, that's two of the clearest wood knocks I've ever recorded. Is what's on that.
All right, let's take a listen to this.
All right.
those were some good wood knocks. What goes through your mind when you're out there in the middle of the night in blackness and you start hearing wood knocks, you're hearing the coyotes going nuts? What, how it's I guess what I'm trying to say is so easy to let your imagination run away from you. So how do you and William keep grounded whenever you're having that kind of activity ramping up around you?
Most of the time, I do really good when I'm hearing all that noise like that. I usually do, because I'm usually excited because we got something going on. And I'll be honest with you, Mark, the thing that shakes me more than hearing all those vocals and the coyotes and everything else is whenever you hear that deep, loud thump on the ground. That's the part that gives me chills. That's I'll be honest. I've heard that a few times, and I mean we've been down there in what we call the dark woods, and when everything's kind of quiet and you just hear this loud thump, sounds like a bowling ball dropped from 15 feet hitting the ground. That gives me chills.
What do you think it is?
A lot of times I've wondered if they stomped their foot or something just to see if I'm paying attention. And if I wasn't paying attention before, I am after that.
What's your biggest fear, Sherry, when you're out there and something starts happening and or something that you don't want to happen?
Taking care of everybody else. What's everybody doing? Where are they at? You know that. I mean, that's been my whole fear of bringing everybody into this to start with. You know, I don't know what I'd do if something happened to any of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it weighs on you heavy. But my whole point of getting into this was to let them know what it can be out there when they're in the woods and to be watching and be alert. That was the whole point of me, starting to do research. But it worries me. I mean, you know what? Missy has no sense when we're out there. She'll take off and she just doesn't think. And I'm running after her, to slow her, to stop her. But, I mean, you can be brave, but you can be cautious and sensible when you're being brave too.
Yeah,
you got to be, because what you do can also cause somebody else to get hurt too. You got to think about those things.
And that's very true. I know that when I first started into this, I was bad about walking away. And you shouldn't be by yourself walking away. You should at least have a buddy with you. And it's, I don't know. It's just, I'm more afraid that if Misty walks away and I'm not telling her, then Sherry is going to give me what for. I'm more afraid of Sherry than I am the boogers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that Steven's the same way when his kids are with him. You just, use your head. You got to take care of everybody as a group. And what you do, like I said, can cause somebody else to get hurt if you're not careful.
Yeah. I understand exactly what you're saying, especially when you have some young people with you. You hear something or whatever. A lot of times that'll be when you want to walk to the outside of the circle.
Yeah.
If something comes in, I want it to face me first. That's usually the mindset.
I don't want to sound like a chauvinist because I'm the furthest thing from one. But when you have women folk around you, I'm I'm on high alert, of where they are at. And I know that, like last week, me and Alex Petkoff were out and doing some filming for Small Town Monsters. And we had a little group with us. And he feels the same way. It was like at Martin Groves. It was like we were kind of fighting over who was going to be at the back of the line, because I like counting heads. Every few minutes, I know how many people are there. I'm watching if anybody veers to the left or the right, and I want to count heads. And Larry's the same way. Either he will lead in the front and I take up the back, or vice versa. I think it's just instinct, but I don't know why. And like I said, I'm the furthest thing from a chauvinist, but I've gotten chewed out before, or, from a lady that thought that, I was worried about her and what she was doing. And
well, I think most even animals, they're gonna know who's the weaker in the pack, and that's another thing. I mean, it may not be the woman, it may be somebody else, but I mean, I'm not weak, I'm not big, but I'm pretty strong. But I do know that if you and I are standing side by side, they're gonna think I'm the weaker one to come after, not necessarily because of the sex, but the size, So all of that you have to take into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I know before when when my daughter would go out with us, it'd be William and Reese and my daughter and me. If I decided I wanted to step away from the truck, I would usually tell her, "You stay by Reese or you stay by William." And if I can't, it's because
think about all the Indian tales. I mean, we've all heard those, the women taken, stuff. And that's what I've tried to tell Misty and the girl. And Caitlin's getting pretty bad walk off with Misty too. And both of those, they're young enough, and they can still bear children. And it's happened. We all know it's happened. All those tales passed down through the nations and stuff, the Indian nations. That's what's happened. And that's a big thing with me to pay attention to.
Yeah. And I guess something to go ahead and add to it. I didn't know if I wanted to bring it up tonight or not. But I told you the age difference with our children. Well, I mean, somewhere around 13, 14 years old, the activity usually ramps up when you have girls. I mean, it just is what it is.
So. Yeah. I remember when I went to speak at Brenda Harris's conference in New Mexico at the Four Corners, and all the stories that she told me about young girls getting abducted. And Dan Rickey has told me similar stories, in Oklahoma. One that really sticks out in my mind was that after they disappeared, some of them had packed their clothes up and put them in suitcases and hid the suitcases because it just scared them. They didn't know whether skinwalkers had gotten them or if Bigfoot had gotten them. But I think that we should all look out for one another, whether we're male or female out there. And those are the people that I want to be out in the field with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, if you will put them in all caps, and we've got we got a few minutes to answer questions. If you have a question for Stephen. While we're waiting on questions, is there another encounter that you would like to tell us about? Another sighting?
Think of another sighting. It was I told you about the one with the round head, and that was one of those times when my daughter, trying to think how old she was. She was 14, I think around 14 years old, and she'd been out and she was cleaning around the pool. It was on a Friday evening, and I decided I'd go out and just, I guess, make my presence known, or just wanted to be outside. And that was the evening that I saw the one with the round head, and that thing was only about 100 yards from the pool, there at the tree line. And my daughter, she went inside, and with that one right there, I took 15 steps toward that one, and that thing never moved. It stood its ground. It shook its head when I took a picture, but it didn't move. And I thought, yeah, I think I'll go ahead and be the one to leave. But that was one with the round. So, I mean, that's that's one of those. That's another one here at home. You know, I mean, we've had several encounters. We've heard several things. I think it was last year that I found a 4-toed print in the driveway, and I should have sent you that picture, because my wife, I had her put her foot down beside it, because I forget what we were doing, gathering up some trash or something. And anyway, I was on the tractor, and I spotted that thing in the driveway, and I called my wife and daughter over, and I said, "Hey, y'all come over and look at this." And my wife, her eyes got big. She said, "How do you see stuff like that?" So it's just, but it was there in the driveway. It was a 4-toed print, so, and a lot bigger than my wife's foot. So.
It's kind of like watching for deer. I'm sorry, Mark. Once you when you first start deer hunting, you can't see a deer. You know, they just slip by you. Then once you spot one, you know, you start noticing how to spot them, and it's the same way with this stuff.
Yeah. It absolutely is. I mean, that's I guess, to reference Kumbo again. You know, the more you see, the easier it is to spot. You know, because you once you kind of
the movement and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. One of our good friends and moderator, Diane Fowler, asked Stephen, how many times have you had a sighting at your home?
Over 9.
Over 9.
Yeah, I want to
go. Road trip.
Yeah. And Mark, earlier you were talking about whenever Kerry went to the place in Arkansas and he found the trail where they would come in to the tree. Well, before the tornado got hit here in 2020, there was a trail going off the backside of my pond on the pond dam. It was wide enough that William and I could walk down it side by side.
That's saying something.
Yep. I went down. I showed it to him there one day, and it was that wide and clean. And I've had several sightings at the pond dam. We've seen eye shine down there before. My daughter, she pointed out some eye shine down there one night, and yeah. William's right. He did find a track in the yard the first time he was here.
Y'all been friends ever since, haven't you?
Is there public land anywhere around you all? Pretty close.
Yeah. My property joins an 11,000 acre WMA.
Okay.
I guess.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So it's so yeah, that's I think that's it. And that's part of the reason one of the things, that I've lived around here all my life. And, um, I'll be 52 before too long. And by putting together some of the different encounters and the different sightings of people that I know in the area, and from a game camera pick that I had back in 2000, I think it's 2011, had a camera out for the deer, and I was putting the rice bran out, and on one of those pictures, when the camera went off, I had 2 or 3 does there at the rice bran, but back behind them in this field, there's a big old set of eyes back there watching the deer. And that was only about a mile from the man who took pictures of tracks in the snow. I think about a year before, or maybe 2 years before that. And then I live between 2 rivers, and from my house going to the river to the east of me is part of their travel route. What they actually do is they make a counterclockwise travel route, and I'm going to say it's at least 7 miles from top to bottom that I know of for sure, and it may extend farther than that. I know when I've walked these trails where I believe they've made markers, I've never walked to the end of one of them. They just keep going. It's
wow.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you do you mark on a calendar or keep a log or something whenever you feel like there's activity, and how long it takes them to travel that corridor and come back close to your house?
There was a time that I kind of kept up with it a little bit. I'm not real good at keeping records. I'm sorry, I'm just not. There are times I've written stuff down and I'm not even sure what I did with that paper I wrote it on now. But to me, Mark, it was about the best that I could guess. It was about anywhere from 15 to 26 days. It was somewhere in that. It wasn't it was never an exact time,
Uh-huh.
It varied with me, with what I was keeping up with at the time. And, they actually go through the edge, the small town that I live close to. I mean, it was in the city limits where my daughter had that sighting in 2008. And my son-in-law had a sighting there in 2020? Had a sighting there. And come to find out, the spot where she saw that, I was thinking that they weren't crossing there. But come to find out, in that spot on the highway, that's where they cross at when they decide to cross there. There's a creek that goes right behind the house. And I was thinking they were probably crossing underneath the bridge. And I used to go look under the bridge and stuff like that, see if I could find any tracks in the creek or in the sand along the creek. I mean, I've heard them up and down that creek before. The loudest footsteps I've ever heard in my life were on that creek. And it sounded like a cow that was walking on 2 feet. It's what it sounded like.
Wow.
And for whatever reason, I don't know why I did it, but I did a grunt, and those footsteps stopped and never made another sound. So, of course, I was behind there was a 6-foot chain link fence with barbed wire on top of it around the backyard of that property too. So I kind of felt safe. but the walking stopped when I did a grunt. So that's pretty crazy to me.
Wow. Our friend Donna West has a question, and she asked, have they ever tried to talk to you through mind speak?
I will answer this as honest as I can. I have been told that they have tried to communicate with me that way. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So, and I know several people who tell you that's an absolute fact that they can. So, and
Did you realize it was happening?
not always. Sometimes it. How to say this is I don't know. Sometimes you'll get a thought in your head, and you kind of wonder where it comes from. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know if y'all have experienced that or not. So it's I'm not gonna rule those folks out. I tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're just about out of time, but Stephen, would you like to leave us with any final comments or tips or things of caution to use when you're out in the woods?
Yeah, I guess if I could give anybody a tip, if you have an area that has activity in it, keep going back to the same area, because the more time you spend in it, I think the more familiar they're going to become with you, and the more likely you are to get some results out of there. To me, it's I know there are people, they'll go chase down sighting reports and stuff like that, and they'll go here and there and everywhere else. But I think that would be like trying to catch lightning in a bottle, in my honest opinion. That's why I would say keep going back to your familiar spots, because I really believe that they can even recognize the sound of your vehicle whenever you come in.
Yeah. Yeah. I very much agree with that. Miss Sherry, do you have any final comments you would like to leave us with?
I've enjoyed the show. I thank you for including me on it, and thank you, Stephen. We're going to try to pay you a visit, or the area close to you anyway.
Yeah, come on sometime. It's a fun spot. And to me, it's a fun hobby. So
yeah, and that's the way that I look at it. It's a hobby.
Yeah.
And first of all, I want to thank you, Miss Sherry, for coming on. You're such a valuable friend of mine that I hold close to me and cherish our friendship. And she is the one that founded Southern Appalachian Sasquatch Seekers. So if you can find them on Facebook, and they would be happy to have you. Not sure how many more shows that we're going to be doing with the holidays coming up. Hopefully Bama will put something together, or Scott Espinosa. And so hopefully we can slip in a couple of more shows before Christmas. But we just appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. And we want to thank everybody for watching. We appreciate each and every one of y'all. That's one thing that Larry and I just hold close to our chest, that these are our friends and our family that are out there. And so with that, night, footers.
Good night, everybody.
If you would like to support Beast TV, check out our gear. We have coffee mugs, face masks, gaiters, shirts, and tank tops. The link is pinned at the top of the comment section. Everything is always marked down 20%. So come check out our junk.
This has been a Sawdust production.